Inside Boxing Weekly on the Grueling Truth Sports Network, brought to you by the Retired Boxers Foundation and MyBookie.ag. If you want to bet the fight this coming weekend, go to MyBookie.ag. You can find them by going to thegruelingtruth.net and just clicking on the MyBookie.ag banner. I'm your host for the show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I want to welcome in my co-host, John Einreinhofer. How you doing, John?
Mike, guys, good to be here tonight.
I should have said the president of Deontay Wilder fan club, but I left that
out. You could save that for a couple minutes and then get that in.
Jeremiah Pricer couldn't do it tonight because he's suckered and he's got a real job. Jeremiah will be back with us either Thursday or Friday night to break down all the fights coming up next weekend. We're just going to talk about the heavyweight showdown tonight between Wilder and Ortiz. So filling in for Jeremiah, he wrote Intimate Warfare with Dennis Taylor, pictures by Ed Mulholland. Great book. I suggest you guys go to Amazon and check it out. Help me welcome to the show, John Raspanti. How you doing, John?
Doing great, Mike. Hey, John. Hey, Luke. Great to be with you guys tonight.
Hey, John.
And, of course, we've got a man that actually fought for the heavyweight championship of the world against George Foreman. I think it was back in 1997. Close fight, great fight. Lou put up a great effort. Help me welcome to the show, former heavyweight contender, Lou Savarese. How you doing, Lou?
Good, buddy. Thanks for having me.
All right, so we've got two undefeated heavyweights fighting for a portion of the heavyweight championship. Let's just start off here looking at a general overview of the heavyweight division. We've got Anthony Joshua fighting Joseph Parker coming up in a few weeks also. Where do you think Ortiz and Wilder stand with the other heavyweights and maybe some of the cruiserweights that might be moving up? We'll start off with John Einreinhofer.
Well, that's actually a good question, Mike, because I'm in concurrence with, I like to look at transnational and the ring ratings. You know, I don't like to look at the alphabet ratings. And both transnational and the ring have Joshua at number 1, Wilder number 2. The original 8 ratings I do for the Grueling Truth, I've got it the same way. Now, Ortiz is a more interesting case. I'll just say for myself, and this would be transnational also probably, because they have him out of their rankings also. If Ortiz didn't have the second PED test, I would have him number 3. But I dropped him out because of the second positive PED test. Transnational did that as well, but the ring has re-entered him in their ratings, and you know, we know he hasn't been suspended from fighting. So, you know, there's a cloudy issue there, but he's cleared to fight. He's got the crack at Wilder, and we know the fight's going to happen Saturday night. It was a very interesting fight before, you know, Ortiz had that second PED issue. It's still a real interesting fight. It's going to be a test for Wilder. I mean, for me personally, maybe just a touch of the shine got taken off it with Ortiz with the second test, but that's not really going to take away the danger that he presents to Deontay Wilder on Saturday night. But I would have, if Ortiz didn't have the positive test, I'd have him ahead of Joseph Parker. I think he's a more dangerous opponent. Even though both haven't looked as good lately, I think Ortiz is more dangerous than Parker. So I actually think he's a more dangerous opponent than Joseph Parker.
All right, Lou, what's your take on the heavyweight division right now?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to look at it. To me, Ortiz, you know, once again, minus the drug test, unfortunately, but he's got such a good amateur pedigree. I mean, he just seems to be, you know, a step above in the way of the talent and the boxing pedigree. But, you know, Wilder's a big, strong guy. He's kind of, you know, he doesn't seem to be as, you know, talented as Ortiz, but it should be interesting. I mean, I like Ortiz. I think he's just, you know, I think his, once again, boxing pedigree is going to rise above. Wilder's kind of, he's strong, a big, strong guy, but he's just, you know, he's real wild, no pun intended. But I think that, I really think Ortiz was going to shine in this fight.
All right, John Raspanti, where do you see these two guys fitting in the heavyweight division? Do you think they're 1 and 2 right now?
No, I don't. I think Joshua is the number 1 guy. I don't have a problem with that. I agree with John. Forgetting about the drug test, which is impossible to do because we don't like that, but I think Ortiz is better than Parker. I agree. He would be number 2, and I think he's better than Wilder. I agree with Lou on that, too. I think he's got more skills, more talent. Just depends on other factors, his age and other things that I'm sure we'll discuss just going on our sponsor, my bookie, he's a pretty good underdog here. So for the fight against Wilder, and you talk about a live underdog, I like his chances, obviously, this Saturday, March 3rd, against Wilder. But yeah, everything John said and Lou said, I agree with. I think those are Joshua and Ortiz and Parker would be where and then I put Wilder. Well, maybe I put Wilder above Parker. It's so hard to say. I think they're very similar, and they're similar in rankings, but they're different in styles, with Wilder being so much taller and everything. So that's a hard one. They're right there, but Joshua is definitely the top guy. He's the guy everybody wants, and this is a risky fight for Wilder, because if things don't work out for him, there goes that big money fight with Joshua. So this ought to be really fun on Saturday night.
Yeah, when I look at this fight and I rank these guys, I would probably have Parker ahead of Wilder. And that's just because of the fact that Parker is beaten, even though they're not great heavyweights, Hughie Fury and Andy Ruiz and Carlos Takam. I mean, they're better than guys that Wilder has beaten. Wilder beat Berman Stavern by a decision, and then he knocks out a Stavern that hadn't fought in a couple years and had no business being in the ring with any top 10 heavyweight, much less somebody that's in the top 5. I think Joshua has to be number one because, as we know if you've listened to the show, I judge a guy by what he does when he gets put on the canvas, and he got back up against Klitschko and won the fight. And say what you want about Vladimir Klitschko, and he's 41 years old. He can still pop, and he's probably, if he came back right now, would probably still be one of the top 2 or 3 guys. So I think Joshua's proven his toughness, which I don't think Wilder has. And the other thing this goes to is not so much, would be skill level. And, I mean, Lou, you want to talk about skill level-wise between Ortiz and Wilder?
Yeah, once again, I just feel Ortiz, I mean, he's much more disciplined. I mean, he keeps everything short. His punches are good. I mean, Wilder, maybe his skill level isn't much, but he's a big, strong guy. He throws everything, once again, it's just everything comes kind of wide. I mean, he's a big, throws his punch, but I just think that Ortiz, the straight punches are going to beat his big, looping punches. I just think Ortiz is, more fundamentally sound than Wilder.
Yeah, and when I get to this...
Once again, Wilder's stronger, probably a big, obviously a big, strong guy.
But when we look at Ortiz and we look at Wilder, John Einreinhofer, my question is this. I mean, does Ortiz's style give Wilder trouble? I mean, he's a southpaw. Yeah. Wilder's only fought one southpaw. That could be a problem, couldn't it?
I actually think the problem is what Lou mentioned for Wilder. The biggest problem is that I think Ortiz is a little bit one-dimensional in terms of he's got the good amateur pedigree. He has some good skills, but even though it comes from a southpaw stance, he just throws a lot of 1-2s. But like Lou pointed out, his 1-2s are real straight, and Wilder gets a little wide when he gets excited. Ortiz throwing the straight southpaw 1-2 with the big left hand would. If he gets that in, and it's shorter than what Wilder throws, I would think that would be Wilder's biggest danger. But I think what Wilder brings, I've said it before, I keep saying it. I think Wilder's sort of a modern day poor man's Larry Holmes. He throws his own 1-2. He doesn't have the skill level of Larry Holmes, but he's got the thinner legs like Holmes had when he came up. A lot of people criticize Holmes about having thin legs. You hear about Wilder. Wilder's got the long reach with the jab. His jab's gotten better every fight. In the first Stavern fight, when it was a more dangerous Stavern, you saw him do really well with his 1-2, showed a pretty good chin in that fight, and he kept banging Stavern with the 1-2, dropped him, and just dominated the fight. And I think that was an offensively dangerous Stavern in that fight. The second fight with Stavern, I think he did everything he could, which is just get him out of there in the first round. If Stavern's not ready, you take care of business, and he did that. And in the first fight, Stavern was a legit top 5 guy. The odds makers had that an even money fight going in, so Wilder responded. And that's really all he can do with the guys that are in with him. And I think that the southpaw style might not be as much of a problem for Wilder because Ortiz is just pretty much with that 1-2, and then Wilder with the long jab, and then Wilder being right-hand oriented with his power. I mean, there's no doubt. that's his power shot. He's got a good left jab, but he's not a left-handed power puncher like a hooker or anything like that. But as long as his right hand doesn't get ridiculously wide, I think he can work his own 1-2, and then he can keep Ortiz outside and box a bit and try to drop in the one power shot, because Wilder does have one-punch power. Larry Holmes had an underrated right hand, but that's one thing Wilder has that Holmes.
How do we know that Wilder has
one-punch
one-punch power, though, John? I mean, who's he knocked out with a great chin? Berman Stavern went 12 rounds with him. Berman Stavern, you could say he was a top 5 heavyweight, but Berman Stavern's biggest wins were 2 wins over Chris Areola. Before that, before he got the title shot, he beat a guy by the name of Willie Herring, who was 13-10. Ray Austin, who was past his prime. I mean, there's nothing here to show me that Stavern was ever a legitimate threat to anybody that was a good heavyweight.
And Stavern had his moments in that first fight, too. I mean, he didn't do too bad in that first fight, It's interesting.
It was a good fight. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I think Stavern did have. I think Stavern did land a couple of shots, but that gave me more confidence in that particular fight with Wilder's chin. I think that's true of a lot of heavyweights nowadays. Joshua does have the better resume on paper, but you saw what Klitschko looked like against Tyson Fury. I mean, he looked like a completely shot guy. He couldn't do anything. And, he was able to drop Anthony Joshua, put him in a life and death situation after having not fought
and if he
months.
hits Deontay Wilder with that shot, the fight's over.
Well, we don't know that, Mike. And he might not hit Wilder with that shot.
I have I have 3 different guys that spar with Wilder, and they all say, he's strong, everything, but the thing they said, the guy Nagy Aguilera spars him. I got a couple other guys, and they all say he doesn't catch real well. I haven't seen it in the fights, but they're saying, so we'll have to see. I mean, I think Ortiz is going to test him. He's got a huge punch, but I think Ortiz is going to get to the chin. I have that feeling. Ortiz is the other thing with Ortiz. He's very used to seeing lefties. A lot of the Cubans are lefty, and seeing tall guys. So I think he'll have an advantage that a lot of guys haven't. He's been in there a lot of tall guys.
Yeah, and my concern is we've seen Wilder's chin tested, and he got knocked down by a 17-20 Harold Sconier's John Raspanti,
No.
and we can't see that because the video's not allowed to be shown anywhere.
Yeah, that video is buried as deep as it can be, I guess. And
I've been trying to get rid of the Tyson video for years.
Well, you need to talk to the people who got rid of the Sconers video. The thing about Klitschko, though, I don't agree with John. I don't think he was shot, and I think he proved it in the Joshua fight. I think he was totally motivated for the Joshua fight. He had something to prove after the Fury fight, and anybody who's ever played sports, and obviously Lou was a pro. Mike and I played in high school. Mike played college. You have something happen to you. It really, and if you're competitive at all, it's really going to fire you up. So I think that's what happened with Klitschko. So that was as good as Klitschko could look, I think, at that point in his career. And that Klitschko would have gave Fury, even with his boxing skills, a much different fight, I believe, in my opinion, if they had fought again. But the way Joshua fights, it was a perfect style matchup. There's always been questions about Wilder's chin, as we know with the Harold Sconers thing and everything. And he's got really skinny legs. John says that about Larry Holmes. I don't remember Larry Holmes' legs being that skinny, John, but that's okay. But he does have a jab, and that jab might be the key for him. If he can jab Ortiz and try to keep him, even though, interestingly enough, even though Wilder has a 3-inch advantage, the reach is pretty much the same. So the problem for Wilder is going to be, this part I agree with John, is the straight punches. If he comes out like he did against Stavern and starts trying to knock him out like that, I think Ortiz will just duck and then come in with that straight shot, and that might be it. So I don't think he will. I think he's not that dumb. I think he's going to try to fight very controlled on Saturday night.
Now, see, another thing.
Well, I think.
Go ahead.
But Mike, you remember when Holmes was on with you recently? He said everybody criticized him on the way up that his legs were too skinny. So Mike got Larry Holmes to tell him that personally after we had an issue.
And then Larry Holmes' legs got bigger. Larry Holmes' legs were accused of being skinny in 1970 and 71 when he was 17 or 18 years old. Larry Holmes was
now,
one
Mike,
of the greatest.
Larry didn't say that, Mike. Larry told you that on his way up.
Larry Holmes doesn't have to tell me that, because
that.
Anything you watch from 75 or 76, when he fought like Fred Houpe, they called him Young Sanford, was that if you watch that fight, and you can find it on my YouTube channel, but if you watch that fight, they talk about how much bigger, how he had filled out since he was younger. I mean, he was also accused of not having a heart and not having a chin because of his fights with Nick Wells in the amateurs and then his fights with Dwayne Bobbitt. And he totally turned that around. And I think that Deontay Wilder's more of a poor man's Michael Grant myself.
Well, Lou's been in there with Michael Grant, so Lou can tell us about what Michael Grant brought to the table and what he did.
Grant was a big, strong guy at Diamonds. I mean, he was very athletic too. I mean, just if I would have known, one of the things I saw, he the right hand. I mean, Galata caught him with the right hand. He came back and won. Grant was I think a very underrated guy. He just did not match up well when he fought. Lewis. I think Lewis took a lot out of him.
Not many people matched up well with Lennox either.
No, he was an incredible fighter. And Galata showed something too, even though he lost. Galata showed that he could be hit with that right hand, and that it's just like a lot of guys. People think they're infallible when they see the guy get beat or see some weakness. It starts to put chinks in guys' armor.
Yeah, but see, at least a guy like Michael Grant fought you. He fought Andrew Galata before he got the shot. With Wilder, he's beaten nobody still. I mean, Stavern, the first time they fought, that's a decent win. But when you look at Stavern's record, I mean, Stavern was the heavyweight champion because he was Don King's last hope. He was guided into it and basically given it to him when he fought Chris Areola.
But, Mike, that's the thing with the heavyweights nowadays. That's not even like the 90s and early 2000s, which when Lou was fighting ended up being the greatest heavyweight era after the 70s. These guys today, they're not fighting other legit top 10 heavyweights. Even Anthony Joshua. Klitschko was off for 17 months when he fought him. He fought Charles Martin, who had the thing where he had that fight with Glasgow before that when Glasgow twisted his ankle. Then he fought Brazil, who's a tough guy.
Brazil's a good fighter.
He's a borderline top 10 guy. But these are guys, though, I'm just saying that it's not like an era where you've got top 10 guy, top 5 guy facing top 5 guy regularly. So we're projecting with all these. But, Mike, we're projecting with all these guys. So Wilder is not the only guy we're making projections with here. It's all these guys. I mean, even Ortiz, he looked great knocking out Bryant Jennings. Then he didn't look as good against Tony Thompson. Wilder took Malik Scott out in a round. He went 12 with him.
Yeah, but Tony Thompson can make anybody look bad against 6'6" lefty. And he's just
and Malik Scott never got hit. Malik Scott took a dive.
He didn't. He didn't take a dive, I guess, against Ortiz. So you keep making excuses for when Wilder
performs that an excuse?
Or something. But I think
the excuse is this, John. Deontay Wilder is protected. It's that simple. Joseph Parker, in his first 20 fights, has fought Carlos Tucam, who I know you have no respect for, but he's a solid guy. Eric Molina.
Mike, Joseph Parker didn't sign to fight Povetkin. Joseph Parker didn't sign to fight Ortiz before this. These guys tested positive for PEDs.
I'm talking about the first 20 fights. In the first 20 fights, you left out Dillian White, who's in most people, at least the bottom of the top 10. Dominic Brazil, who's a good fighter. This is in his first 20 fights. Deontay Wilder is struggling with Harold Sconiers in his first 20 fights. And the thing is this, I don't see how a guy who's in his 30s, who's 39-0 and hasn't been tested, gets any better not being tested. I mean, I don't see how your skill level can improve when you're fighting guys that can't force you to get better.
Well, I think we all agree if he wins this fight, that's going to be, I think by far his best win.
Exactly.
So we'll see. I mean, everybody has to have that one defining fight that puts them puts them into the next stratosphere. So hopefully this will be it.
Yeah, we're going to know, like Lou said, we're going to know Saturday night. Right, Saturday night's going to take care of that.
Yes, it will.
Yeah, this is the biggest fight for Wilder in his career, no doubt about it. He's been talking a lot of trash, and that's fine. been building up the gate. That's fine. But this, I hope he realizes, I think he does, that this is really a dangerous fight for him, most important fight of his career. This might be the fight that he gets to prove Mike or me or a bunch of us who are not sure about him wrong when he gets knocked down, because it very much could happen, and he gets up. And
do we all agree Wilder doesn't win the decision? I don't see it that way. What do you guys think?
This is
I think he could win a decision, Lou. I just think with that 1-2, but I think the key with Wilder there is the weight. He's got to weigh in at about 219, 220. And Lou, I wanted to ask you that. Heavyweights don't have to make weight. So how important is it for the heavyweights to discipline themselves to come in at a certain weight?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, you have to give yourself some accountability. I mean, my weight always stayed the same. Pretty much I'd always come within a couple of pounds of my weight. And, if you look at most of the great guys, Holyfield, I'm saying I'm in his league, but look at Holyfield. I mean, he always came in probably 3 or 4 pounds. Even Tyson in his prime always stayed around the same weight. You look at guys, guys that fluctuate. They didn't have to, Tony Tubbs was a great guy, but his weight was always up and down. It just shows, I think, discipline, and I think it's huge to have it. It seems like Ortiz is always around the same weight too, but these guys have to have that discipline.
Yeah,
I agree, and that's what I think. When Wilder's at 219, 220, I think he can win decisions over people. He can move.
Point, yeah.
But when I saw him against Molina and Duhaupas, when he was like 229, 230, he doesn't look as good. So if he comes in at 229 or 230 Saturday night, I'll say he's going to give himself a chance to lose.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I mean, really, because it's always indicative of, people will say, oh, I was lifting weights or whatever, but it's usually indicative of, not the same training regimen or lack of.
Yeah, and I think the other big question is this, Lou, and you can speak to this. This is Wilder's first really big fight, I think. You're at the Barclays Center. It's going to be a huge crowd. All this pressure on him with a lot of people saying that he's a hype job. A lot of people love him. You want to talk a little bit about your first time? Your first huge fight was George Foreman. And I know in any sport, when you have your first moment, whether it's a championship game in football or a championship game in boxing, that everything is a little bit different. It's a lot harder to control your breathing. It's a lot harder to think. It's a lot harder to do pretty much anything.
It's a great point you bring up. I mean, my biggest fight before then was Buster Mathis, and it was on ESPN. But then all of a sudden, we had our press conference for Foreman at Windows of the World, at the former World Trade Center. We opened the stock exchange, and it was just huge. I mean, it was just a whole different stratosphere. But it was funny for me because I myself didn't really know how I was going to react to it. So when I got in the ring with Foreman, I was eating it up. I really enjoyed it. It was fun. I remember him hitting me one time, and I talked a little trash, and then he hit me harder, and I'm like, I better not talk anymore. But I was enjoying it. I liked being there, and that's it changed me. It just put me on a different level. And I think that's what happens with guys. But these guys, don't forget. I mean, they've been around. I mean, Wilder. He's had some pretty big amateur fights and stuff. That means a lot, for these guys. And Ortiz, he's seen so much stuff in his career. I think that, we'll see. I just think that both of them should be able to get up for this fight. We'll see. But I definitely Ortiz. I don't think I'll have any problem. I think he's pretty disciplined mentally, anyway. And I think that, Wilder too. He's had some big moments in his amateur career and everything too. With the, so we'll see. I think it's going to be interesting.
All right.
Yeah, I got to say, I was at Lou's fight with George Foreman with my brother Don in Atlantic City, and Lou came into the ring to staying alive. So I still remember that, and that was a great fight. And I got to say too, talk about pressure. Joe DiMaggio was at ringside for that fight.
I remember that was the highlight of my career.
Yeah. So when you get to fight in front of Joe, I think that might have been one of Joe D's too. So. That was a pretty great night. A lot of pressure there.
Him and Sinatra, they in my household they were legends.
Definitely. I'm Italian on my mom's side too. So
Italian on my dad's side.
Yeah. So we know how that stuff goes.
All right. So my question is this: going into the fight, what do you think Wilder's best course of action is to win this fight, John Raspanti? I mean, do you expect him to come out fast like he did against Stavern? Or do you think since it's Ortiz and he has a little bit more respect that maybe he comes out a little slower?
I think he's going to come out a little more controlled. I do. I don't think he's going to just come out winging like he did against Stavern. If he does, I think that's a mistake. The thing is he's got to find out how he can do boxing with Ortiz. And if he puts out that long jab and keeps hitting his face, he might be able to discover that he can hit him with some sneaky rights. But it's hard to say in that respect because that's what I would do if I was Wilder. But Wilder might think, look, I want to knock this guy out early. I think that's a mistake. So I'm expecting him to try to, for a few rounds at least, try to figure him out, try to box. But, again, that's going to be very hard against Ortiz because that might be playing right into Ortiz's game. So he might try that for a round or two, and if that doesn't work, then he might try to go in there and bomb with him. It's going to be tough because of the experience that Ortiz has. And if Ortiz is in the kind of shape, we were talking about weight and all that. I saw some video of him running. He looks like he's taking this really seriously. If he's in the best shape that he can be in for this fight, it's going to make it harder on Wilder. Now, Wilder does have some power, so if he happens to tag Ortiz early, then that changes everything. But I kind of think he's going to take it a little easy in the beginning, Mike, and see what happens. I'm talking about the first couple of rounds.
All right, Lou, on the other side, if you're in the corner of Luis Ortiz, what's your game plan to win this fight?
I disagree about the part. I think Wilder's got to come out. He's got to try and, in the beginning dominate and, land something big and, get the momentum his way. I think if he goes out there and boxes, that's going to go right into Ortiz's ball game. I think Ortiz is going to be, trying to get that. He's going to really try and get his front foot outside, get his right foot outside, what's his left foot, so that they can, and get that, try and get his lead left going. I think that's going to be, he's got incredible footwork, Ortiz, too. I think it's really going to be, I think Wilder's best chance is to go out there and, kind of, put out, try and get him hurt early and then, keep the momentum his way. But I think boxing, for me, I think that would play right into Ortiz's hands.
Yeah, and I don't think John was saying that was what he thought he should do. I think John Raspanti was trying to say that's what he thinks he'll do. Right, John?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
I
just making
agree
sure.
with Lou. I think, I think that's what he'll do. I think what he should do is what Lou said. Yeah, that they should just come out there and try to dominate right away and get the fight going his way because that might be his only, in that respect, might be the best way to maybe he could hurt Ortiz early, stop him early. I mean, that might be the best way to go.
All right, John Einreinhofer, how do you think Wilder will win this fight?
Well, actually, I see it like John Raspanti had described it, and then I do myself think that that's what Wilder should do, but Lou makes a good point, which makes this fight so interesting, which is my vision for Wilder is sort of he comes in at 219, 220 like he did in the first Stavern fight and in some of his good recent performances, including the last Stavern fight, and then tries to box him with the 1-2 using his superior agility, and he's got youth on his side. And then what I think Wilder brings that, maybe somebody, again, as a poor man's version of a Larry Holmes, of course, not on that kind of talent level, but, he's got the one punch type power, and then he could just drop one in while he's boxing. He did drop Stavern in the first fight, even though he didn't stop him. But I think Lou makes the good point that, and as John Raspanti is affirming, with Ortiz, he looks in good shape on those videos you've seen recently, and with his amateur background from that Cuban school, is Wilder at more risk, like Lou's saying, if he boxes him and then Ortiz just has that pedigree and, it becomes a problem for Wilder as it goes on. But even though Wilder didn't have that many amateur fights, he did pick up a bronze medal himself. He's younger, he's bigger. I think at this stage he's quicker. So I do think there's scenarios where Wilder can box him and then just drop in a bomb along the way while he's boxing him with the 1-2.
My question is this: are you talking about
enough.
Quicker with his feet or quicker with his hands?
I'm not saying he's more agile, but I think at this point in his career he is a little bit quicker with his hands.
Okay, but I think in this fight, I think the feet are more important than the hands.
Well, I think the feet too, Mike. I think he's awkward in a sense, but in another sense, Wilder has, kind of an agility when he's weighing in at 219, 220. That's where I compare him to the poor man's Holmes, like when Holmes, was 208 against Norton, that type of a thing, a taller guy with kind of the thin legs who's got the ability to move around the ring, but he can still bang you with some authority with the long jab and the right hand. You saw Paulie Malignaggi in the first round, the last fight that ended in the first round, but before Wilder stopped Stavern, he was talking about Wilder's jab being like Holmes. We did see that type of thing himself, and I see those types of attributes. So I think he could use those and possibly, box Ortiz. I don't know how Ortiz is going to be if it gets into the second half of the fight, what kind of stamina he's going to have there. He stopped Jennings pretty early, and in these recent fights, not the last one we had to blow out over the Marks guy, but in the ones like with Scott, going into the later rounds, not looking particularly sharp.
All right, so when we wrap this up, look at this fight. Let's go ahead around and get everybody's predictions. John Raspanti?
Well, this is a hard one, Mike, because I do think that Ortiz can definitely win. I just wonder, with everything that's going on with around the guy and how old he really is he 46 or is he 38? He can win. Will he win? That is the question. I don't, I guess I got to make a pick. It's like a 50-50 fight to me in my mind, but I'm leaning Ortiz just because I think that, here we go again. If Wilder does some silly things, Ortiz will nail him. That's exactly how I'm seeing it. If he does it, I think Wilder might be fresher, younger, and might be able to stop him late. But I'm going to say right here that my edge is towards Ortiz. Maybe around round 8, he might just nail Wilder and stop him.
All right, John Einreinhofer.
I'm going to assume Wilder's going to weigh in at 219, 220, like he's done at his best, and then he's going to. I do think there's a scenario where he could win a decision, but I'm leaning towards a stoppage in the second half of the fight, between maybe 6 and 10. But I do think it's a fight that Ortiz can win, and I don't mean that in the sense where it's heavyweights, anything can happen. I mean it where, he's got a legitimate chance to win. He's a dangerous opponent for Wilder. But I do think, I will say, because we haven't had the weigh-in yet, I don't think you can say it automatically changes it. But if Wilder comes in at 229, 230, I give Ortiz a much greater chance to win than I would if Wilder's at 219 or 220. But I have been a believer in Wilder the more I've watched him, and I'm not going to give up on him now. I think that he will be able to get this done.
Yeah, when I look at this, I agree completely with John Raspanti. I mean, the age thing worries me. Without that, there's no doubt who's better. I mean, Ortiz is technically better. He's got better feet. I think what this comes down to is how does Wilder come out? And I think he's going to come out tentative. I mean, it's his first big fight. He's going to run his mouth all week. You know that because he can't stop. And the problem with that is guys that usually run their mouths, I mean, if you remember Mike Tyson, 86 through 88, he'd do a little bit of talking, but he was kicking everybody's ass. It wasn't until you see him start running off at the mouth, saying stupid stuff, doing stupid things, where you saw him start to lose fights. And the one thing I know, outside of Muhammad Ali and a few other guys, usually if you're running around running your mouth like that, it's usually the sign of insecurity. And I think Wilder has doubts about himself, too. I mean, I'm sure he's not a stupid guy. He realizes he's not fought the best competition, and now he's going to fight somebody. So that has to be in the back of his mind also. I like Ortiz to win this fight by a third-round knockout. Lou?
Wow. I like Ortiz, too, but I'm thinking ninth round. I just think that he's going to start getting to him in the later rounds, And on the flip side, like John said, maybe, it's interesting. And we'll see. This could be this could be Wilder's, rising moment. Everybody has one, but I just don't see it. I think that the pedigree, once again, I think great point about the feet. I mean, that's going to be huge. And this guy, he's seen Wilder's bringing a lot more than, there's guys that he had sparred with. There was a lot of guys that almost the same size as Wilder that were around the same time he was. Guys that were coming down, Luis Gonzalez. I mean, there was a lot of guys that he's been in the ring with a bunch of times that look alike like this guy. So I don't think he's going to have too many surprises. And I think that Wilder could see a lot more surprises from Ortiz.
Yeah, I think this is going to be an extremely interesting fight. We haven't had too many of them in the heavyweight division since the century started, if you want to be truthful about it. All right, any final words, John Raspanti?
Oh, I'm just really looking forward to this fight, guys. The heavyweights are always exciting. Lou was part of that. Man, I saw enough of his fights back in the day, and anytime there's a heavyweight fight, we all get excited because the cliche, of course, is that one punch can end it, but it's not with that case. It's not that with this fight. This fight is a matchup of styles and pedigree and all that stuff, and we're going to find out a lot. We're going to find out a lot about Deontay Wilder, I think, and that, to me, really makes it a real fascinating fight.
All right, Lou, we'll let the head of the Deontay Wilder fan club have the last word. So go ahead, Lou.
But this would be great. I mean, because listen, there's still a little, people aren't sure. I'm not sure, but I really feel Ortiz is going to win. But it's going to be interesting, and it's what we need in the heavyweight division, guys. And hopefully, there's not going to be a bear, but hopefully Wilder comes in the best shape he could be. And, it's going to be a great fight. And let's see, hopefully, maybe Wilder, steps up and becomes the new, the new heavyweight that we need. We need a guy with, some charisma and everything. So maybe this is the guy.
All right, John Einreinhofer.
Yeah, I think like Lou said and John's alluding to, it's good for the division. It's good for the sport when you're not exactly sure what's going to happen going in. That's what we need more of boxing, and you've got some of that in this fight. And I think, remember too, like Lou was saying about Tony Thompson being difficult, Wilder's got that kind of height. And I think that could be a factor here too. You saw Ortiz start to lunge some against Thompson. Now he got him out of there in like 6, and he wasn't in any danger in the fight or anything. But you saw some moments there where he started having some trouble, started doing some lunging, and he does lunge with his 1-2 sometimes like that. So I think Wilder's height could be some trouble. And let's say I think we have to be fair to Deontay Wilder in the event that he does have a good performance and get the win here. Does he become the number one guy? Does he have a claim to become the number one guy if this fight does go his way on Saturday night?
I think it's according to how the fight goes his way and what happens with Joshua and Parker.
Fair enough.
I mean, if Joshua comes out and knocks out Parker in 2 rounds, which I don't know if it'll happen or not, I doubt it. But if he does, I mean, he's got to win against Klitschko. He's got to win against Parker. I still think, to me, Anthony Joshua's the best heavyweight in the world. I'm not completely sold on Anthony Joshua either, by no means. It's just I saw him beat Klitschko. And to me, right now, I think Vladimir Klitschko would be hard for Ortiz or Wilder to handle.
Fair point. Yeah, I agree. But
I totally agree. I don't know. I don't know if Klitschko had that much left. I loved his fight with Joshua. I thought it was a great fight myself, and I thought Klitschko ahead. And I believe in Joshua too. I just think that Wilder, if Wilder's what I think he is, and he will then have to get by Ortiz. Of course, I think that he's got a package that can beat Joshua, but it's going to have to be one step at a time. He's got to get by Saturday night first.
Well, if he could learn to consistently throw straight punches and could move his feet halfway decent, I would go with you. But Joshua's a young guy. He's younger than Wilder, and he's fought better competition, and he moves better. And technically, I think he's just a superior boxer. I think Ortiz
That's a great point about,
Go ahead. Sorry, Lou. If you're going to agree with me, Lou, talk all you want.
No, absolutely. No, the straight punches. I mean, that's going to be a big thing. I mean, it's going to be really hard to hit Ortiz with these looping punches where he's been getting away with other guys. So Ortiz has the talent to get underneath some of the stuff and then come back. But I think that's a great point you bring up. I mean, if he starts if he could throw the straight punches and be used that long jab, but if he starts looping, throwing these wild punches, I just don't think Ortiz is going to hit with that stuff.
Yeah, and that's the key. I think you could make a case he's the number one heavyweight if you could see him come out, John, and for 3 or 4 rounds throw straight punches and just pick Ortiz apart and knock him out. Because right now, my problem with Wilder is the long looping punches. Because if you're fighting a technically good boxer and you're fighting like that, I mean, that's why if you ever see a fight in a bar room, the guy that's throwing the straight punches is the guy that wins.
Yeah, I think that's what maybe helps Wilder slightly about in a strange way about Ortiz being a southpaw is that Wilder, Ortiz isn't much of a right hooker, so he's not. There's not going to be, and Ortiz being a southpaw. In other words, if Wilder gets a little bit lazy with that jab, he's not necessarily going to be taking something over it.
Yeah, but what John said before about I think the feet is going to be a really important thing here. I mean that's going to be. I want not to beat it to death, but he's seen this. Ortiz has seen this style so many times. But I just don't know how many times Wilder's seen a guy like Ortiz with the lefty and that angle, that straight left coming at that position. It should be interesting.
All right, John Einreinhofer.
Yeah, and
John Einreinhofer.
Yeah, I think that's true. That I mean, you don't see many. You still even in this day and age, you don't see many southpaw heavyweights and. Wilder didn't have that many amateur fights, even though he got the bronze medal. So it's not like he was.
Come on, who cares if you get a bronze medal in the Olympics anymore? Olympic boxing is a joke and has been for 25 years.
It still matters, but it's just that he.
I think
did
Holyfield get a bronze medal?
Yeah, Holyfield
pretty good.
But that's just because he hit Kevin Barry slightly late and they screwed him out of it.
He got robbed.
Which is why amateur boxing is crap, because it's probably even more corrupt than professional boxing, if that's possible.
Roy Jones, probably the worst amateur.
We could probably sit here and throw out names of guys that got screwed over royally in the Olympics or the box offs to get to the Olympics all night long.
Yeah, definitely. All
right, guys.
And Mike, I was just say. Can I say? Good. Yeah, I was just going to say too that the boxing brain might come into play here too, and I think Ortiz has the bigger brain here as far as maybe being able to adapt if things aren't going his way. I mean, I don't know if Wilder comes out a certain way and things don't. Will he be able to change or modify what he's trying to do? And if he gets frustrated and throws one of those wide punches, I think Ortiz is going to be waiting for that.
Yeah, and that's what I think. I think that's how this ends.
That's a great point, yeah. That's a great point. If things get heated and somebody gets hurt, I think Ortiz has a lot better chance of recouping and coming back. But that might, that's a great point. Let's see what happens with Wilder starts getting tagged by Ortiz. It should be interesting.
All right, guys. I want to thank Lou for coming on with us. Does anybody have anything else before we go?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for Lou coming on. And Lou grew up in Greenwood Lake, and I'm from West Milford, and we share Greenwood Lake there.
Get out of here.
So, yeah, I had to get into
school. Hold on. I went to school at Queen of Peace.
Oh yeah, in West Milford. I didn't know you went to Queen of Peace though. So you actually went to West Milford. So you know where DeMarco's Pizza is and all that stuff.
Are you kidding me? Yeah, I used to know the guy that owned it, Papastatus, Dave Papastatus.
Yeah.
I used to know the guy that owned that place. Yeah, it was great. But some of my toughest fights were at Queen of Peace. The nuns used to beat the poop out of me, man. They were tough.
Did they throw straight punches or were they big hookers?
No. Hey. Just don't make it a habit.
Great shot. Straight punches.
Yeah, see, West Milford, New Jersey's a tough place, see?
Yeah, well, Greenwood Lake is half is in New York and half is in New Jersey. We used to beat up on those Jersey guys all the time.
Yeah, exactly. I still eat at Breezy Point. I still eat at Breezy Point once a month.
Yeah. So I used to bounce at a bar called. I was 17. I was the bouncer at a bar called the Twilight Zone, and everybody used to come from Jersey.
Yeah.
Oh my God! There was more fights.
We used to drive up there to drink from Jersey. Yeah, so that was crazy. Yeah. That was crazy days. Good thing I didn't get any trouble with you there at the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, I was a 17-year-old bouncer. So anyway, well, that's great. Thanks for having me on,
Yeah.
guys. I really appreciate it.
And you're welcome back anytime, Lou. And if you want,
Thanks,
if you're not
guys.
doing anything Saturday night after the fight, we'll be live after the fight also.
100%. That'll be great.
Okay, we'll pencil you in for Saturday
And
night
hopefully
then.
my ninth round prediction comes in.
That's right. Then you're going to be watching me on. Yeah.
What is the odds now? I know.
I think it was minus 250 the last time I saw. Did you check
Really?
it, John?
That is
Wilder's.
right.
Yeah, Wilder's minus 315, and plus 255 for Ortiz.
Yeah, interesting. My wife won't let me bet, but anyway, if she would.
If she would, you could go on mybookie.ag on thegruelingtruth.net. But really, guys, if you want to bet it, you go there. But, all right, we're going to go ahead.
Guys.
Yep, we're going to go ahead and wrap the show up. I want to remind everybody you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher. Wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So, for Lou Savarese, John Einreinhofer, John Raspanti, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.